After weeks of anticipation, former special counsel Robert Mueller will deliver his first public testimony.
Joining us right now in his first interview since leaving the Department of Justice is former acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker.
Matthew, great to be here.
Nice to have you on the Kirby couch.
First interview. That's nice. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So what do you think is going to happen here? Mr. Mueller is going to sit down in 50 minutes and start saying what?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because I think the Democrats, especially on the Judiciary Committee, are going to want to get him to bring to life the report, because that was, if you remember, let's show the people the movie because they won't read the book. Right. I think that insults a lot of Americans who have taken this very seriously and have paid attention. So I think you're not going to see Bob Mueller leave the four corners of the document. I think he's going to refer to the document a lot, more than is probably going to be desired. And he's not going to offer a lot of opinions when they ask him, what do you think of this behavior of the president or what this person did. So I don't think we're going to learn a lot today, but it is going to put on video a 440 some odd page report.
Right. And I'm just curious, within the last 12 hours, it became clear that Aaron Zebley, his longtime associate, will be there. He requested him be sworn in. Who is this guy, and what is your reaction to this?
Well, I wish, when I did my Judiciary Committee hearing, I wish I could have had a wingman to help me with some of the answers.
You didn't need
because there's a lot of information that you need to remember, and Bob Mueller is going to speak for a team that was almost 20 lawyers and another twice as many investigators, and so he's going to have to distill all that information and remember what's in the report. And I think it's going to be like a security blanket or a wingman that can interject or say, well, that's not exactly what the report says. Let me help you with that.
Right.
And I think it's going to be an interesting dynamic because nobody knows who this Zebley guy is, and I don't know how that's going to be viewed of having this person supporting Mueller as he.
Yeah, why can't he answer the question himself?
I think it's going to provide a really interesting dynamic.
They were not going to ask him questions. They're going to ask Mueller questions. They only get 5 minutes each. Those questions are going to be directed to him. But let's talk about the preparation that has gone into this, what we can expect from the Democrats and the Republicans, because they've both been preparing. The Democrats have had these mock things. Nancy Pelosi sent out this memo to everyone, and then the Republicans have been up really late last night preparing too. What can we expect? What's going to be the message from each side?
Well, I think each side needs to make sure it's a perfect and simple message. And I think the Democrats are going to try to say that there's all sorts of nefarious things, and this, it's kind of consistent with how they always just demean and try to take down the president and score political points. So you're going to end up on the left with a real political circus trying to score political points. I think on the right, you're going to end up talking about sort of how this investigation started,
right,
and why are we here. And why in part 2, where it says, that we're not saying that the president committed any crimes, why are, what are we talking about as it relates to, sort of all this alleged obstruction or, attempted obstruction, which I just, having been there and having supervised this investigation, right, I can tell you, as I read that report, it is not what the special counsel regulations required. And so I was really surprised once it came out what Bob Mueller had put down on paper.
In what way wasn't it?
Well, so the special counsel regulations are there because of the serious conflicts of having all these political appointees supervise the investigation. You put a special counsel in through those regulations, and they're supposed to make prosecution decisions and they're supposed to make declination decisions, which is what prosecutors do, what U.S. attorneys, what I previously did. And what he did here is he didn't make those prosecution or declination decisions. He just recited the facts of the investigation. And I think that's inconsistent with what the regulations require.
Well, do you think you saw enough for obstruction?
No.
Do you think you saw enough of collusion?
No.
So he said no collusion.
Well, there's clearly no collusion. I mean, let's be clear. It is in the report on its face in part 1 states that the president was not part of a conspiracy with the Russian government.
It flat out says.
Yeah, it flat out says that. And the other thing is that, remember, there is if there's no underlying crime, it's hard to have an obstruction.
Sure.
As a U.S. attorney and someone that charged crimes, I can't remember a time where there was no underlying crime and we would have charged or even alleged an obstruction or an attempted obstruction. So, I mean, I think the unfortunate thing is the political noise and what's going on and all the experts on both sides and these former U.S. attorneys, all my former colleagues and people in other administrations come on and say definitively X, Y, or Z, and that's just not the case.
Sure.
There's a lot more art than science in this, but as I read it, and somebody that, I'm very familiar with the facts in the situations involved, it's not even a close call, I don't think.
Right. Mr. Whitaker, you were presiding over the Department of Justice as Attorney General during part of the Horowitz investigation. You got to figure that at some point, Mr. Mueller is going to be asked a question about the origin of the FBI investigation, and he's going to say, you know what, we got somebody looking into that. I can't really comment on that. However, he could comment on, why did you fire Peter Strzok? Yeah,
there's a lot of questions surrounding the investigation that I just don't think Bob Mueller is going to be willing to answer.
Why?
He said in his press conference that the report is his testimony, and I think he is going to be very frustrating for both sides when they ask these questions, because he's just going to refuse to answer some of these allegations that are sort of on the periphery of the investigation. But that's a very serious question.
What would you ask Robert Mueller?
Well, I would really want to know why he did not make, consistent with the special counsel regulations, prosecution or declination decisions, and why in part 2 did he just punt and really kind of make it somebody else's problem to deal with.
We all want to know that, too, because James Comey said that he would be indicted if he were not the president, if he were not Trump. But then I heard so many interviews last night saying, wait a minute, did James Comey, if you read the whole report, there were 10 points of possible obstruction. But then everyone I heard last night who read all of those, who are lawyers, they said when they read through it, there is absolutely no crime committed when you look at those 10 points. You say the same thing? No crime?
Oh, yes. And in fact, part 2 says that they are not alleging that the president committed a crime. And that's where they also have that, but we don't exonerate him. But, you know, everybody forgets the first part, which says we're not alleging that the president committed a crime. I don't think any of those 10 rise to the level of a chargeable offense. I've read it very carefully. I'm familiar with many of those episodes. And I was really surprised to see so many legal experts come on and say, well, that's I'd for sure charge that crime. You wouldn't. And
give us an example. What's one of those episodes?
Well, I think firing Jim Comey is a prime example where the president's exercising his presidential powers under Article 2, and he's allowed to do it, and you cannot. The intent element is so important for obstruction. And it's just not there, and there's no evidence. And the frustrating thing for me, in part 1, they do a really good analysis of how the law and the facts, and they all intertwine. Part 2, they just sort of put out the facts. Yeah, they just put out the facts, and they make a lot of allegations about the facts, and they give witnesses more credibility than they deserve. Like Andy McCabe, they give him a lot of credibility about what he said or what he remembered. I wouldn't give Andy McCabe any credibility as a witness at a trial. And so, I think if you really boil it down, part 2, I just do not think Bob Mueller did what he should have done under the regulations.
Just a quick question for you. You walked in there, you replaced Jeff Sessions. What did you walk into with this administration? How much did this Russia probe weigh on Donald Trump's first 2 years?
Well, it certainly was a cloud that hung over. But at the same time, I saw a president day to day that was accomplishing his agenda and was able to, even with all the noise and all the really what ended up being false allegations, if you remember all these things that people were saying at the time and all these experts on TV. And now that you have this report, I think it's good for the president to get this behind him and to continue to accomplish the agenda. I mean, if you look at the economy, how well it's doing, I mean, the president has presided over that and put in place really a structure that the economy is going to continue to chug along for years to come, and all the kind of things he's accomplished. The crisis on our border, I think the president has. I mean, we were doing everything we possibly could and trying to come up with other ways to fix this problem. And there's one thing after another that this president was able to, even while this was going on, to still accomplish a large part of his agenda. And it's really admirable. And it was an honor of a lifetime to serve in the administration and to work with him.
Well, I think you're probably going to be watching along with everybody. 40 minutes from now, Mr. Mueller is going to be right in that room. That's what the photographers are waiting for. Yep. Matthew, thank you. Matthew Whitaker, thank you very much.
Thank you for your first interview after leaving.
No problem.
We appreciate
it's a pleasure.
it.